Hey guys, it's Lohpally here with another video, and today we're going to be jumping into Nilah, the Joy Unbound ability reveal. This is basically the new champion that's supposed to be coming out, that just kind of got released on, Twitter and Reddit, so we're just going to jump right into it, brought to you by Skin Spotlights for checking out the new champion. I'm going to give you my thoughts, my general concerns, and, my general feelings on the character as we just kind of jump into it and go over each of the spells.
Warning, warning, warning.
So, let's first jump into the passive. I will admit, though, that I've kind of already seen a little bit of what the character is, and this actually seems to be what most people are screenshotting when it comes to, oh wow, look at the new champion, breaking new boundaries of the character. So, first off, Nilah is going to amplify the healing and shielding abilities of nearby allies. This basically means that, she's going to be a great character if you pair her with an enchanter. Lulu's the one that's shown here, but, Soraka, Sona, etc. will all be great characters to pair with it just because of bonus healing and shielding. It's never a bad stat to have. Also, allies that heal or shield Nilah gain a bonus heal or shield for themselves. Now, we don't know the numbers for something like this, but I guess basically if you are shielding your teammate, then it's going to shield you. Kind of like a pseudo guardian that you can activate. So kind of an interesting thing. Interested in the percentages and the numbers attached to this. Also, most curious about how this scales, does it scale with crit damage? Does it scale with your base AD? Is it a flat number that just scales with levels and the numbers are negligible? This has the potential to be a very powerful spell or a very useless spell in a lot of ways, shapes, and forms if it really doesn't scale that greatly. Also, when an allied champion heals or shields themselves near Nilah, she gives herself a bonus shield or heal. Now, the character that kind of comes to mind for me the most is definitely Sona, just because her healing and shielding works on both herself and Nilah. So I wonder how those things will cycle through with each other. I wonder if that will just be like an incredibly abusive and powerful and potent power. Most of this character so far to me, though, says Yuumi. Yuumi probably is going to be one of the most potent combinations with this character, even though she can't actually use the shield on herself, just because of the fact that I feel like when it comes to, characters that are shorter range or melee or anything like that, Yuumi seems to be one of the premium characters because she gives you unlocked potential at all inning at level 6, and she just provides a lot of sustain at level 1. Abnormally high compared to pretty much any other character. And then here is the thing that kind of has been shared around Twitter a lot, and so my biggest concern, obviously, and to be completely fair with you guys, I think that this ability passive doesn't need to exist. Like, legitimately, I feel like you could basically remove this whole bottom side, and the character's kit still functions fine. Which is, if Nilah last hits an enemy minion, she and her nearest allied champion will gain the normal amount of EXP shared, plus half of the experience that would normally have been lost due to sharing. Now, if you didn't know this for a long period of time, obviously when you duel with someone, you don't get the full EXP, right? And they've heavily reduced it to where it's a pretty big tax, like to share EXP even with 2 people. It used to be designed where, it used to be a 75%-ish. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was close to about 75% EXP shared between each of you. So technically, like, the lane itself would get about 150%. But nowadays, it's been reduced pretty heavily, and it's like under 70% nowadays. And so it takes a really long time to level up when you're bottom lane by your with another partner. That's why roaming supports became so popular for a long time. If you spend a lot of time out of lane, your AD carries levels just skyrocket, right? And this pretty much circumvents almost all of it. Getting half of the experience, you'd think like, oh, well, you're still missing like half, but like you're not missing half, you're missing half of a half, which means that you're basically slicing and incurring complete landscape of the laning phase completely out of there. I think one of the goals of this was just to be like, oh yeah, you can feel good about like staying in lane with this character, and so like it's almost like you should always be laning with this character. But I'm really terrified of this just because of the fact that I don't know how many people have been around for a long period of time, but this gives me old Mordekaiser vibes. Now, before we saw the Mordekaiser that we see today, there was another reworked version of Mordekaiser, where basically, I'm pretty sure it was when he was killing things with his W, he got around the EXP changes that were going on in the laning phase. So basically, he would get to level 6, you know, as fast as a soul laner, and then what ended up happening is no one could lane against him. There's like, this guy is too strong all the time. Even though he's laning with another person, he's just... the character has incurred such a huge EXP lead that it's just so OP. And especially now with the durability changes where like there's been a lot more bonus tankiness jammed into your levels. Levels are even more valuable than they used to be. And this terrifies me because it's just going to make it so that this character has too many confusing breakpoints for newer players. And honestly, in a like at a higher level, it's going to be really, really abusable. So for example, right, like in bottom lane, you need the full wave, so 6 minions, plus the 3 melees to hit level 2. Well, guess what? With things like this, if they're last hitting well, then maybe they get it, you know, 1 or 2 minions earlier. Also, this is a really confusing passive because it's when you last hit. So, like, if your Nilah misses last hits, you just, like, don't get the EXP curve correctly. It's super weird and super confusing and honestly convoluted, and I think too damaging to the concept of the game where like, oh, 2 people, this is the set EXP, and having like a landscape where a character changes that, this passive alone could potentially make the character just a permabanned character until they literally delete this passive. It reminds me a lot of how Camille E used to, you know, give all this attack speed, all these extra stats that would be jammed into her E when she was hookshotting into people, and they got rid of like all of it. And it's just like, yeah, you just stun people now, and like it's still a you know, a really pivotal part of the character. And so this right here, I think, should get a lot of feedback and probably a lot of backlash. If you want this character to like be functional in all the other categories of, you know, good fluidity, strong, you know, good landing phase, etc., this is probably the most alarming thing because this will fundamentally hold the character back until it's removed. So huge, not a fan of this, but I think this is actually like an interesting and kind of cool thing. You know, one thing that I don't like, though, that they kind of did with Pyke a lot is they very distinguished, right? Like, oh, well, you can only play, you know what I mean? Like, in the way Samira kind of works, we're like, oh, well, Samira needs a CC to proc her knockup passive, right? So that's like, oh, okay, I can only play knockup passives. And this character is like, oh, okay, you need to have an enchanter or else, like, you're just completely, you know, you're not getting value out of a lot of their power. So we're jumping into Formless Blade. Sorry, that one probably took a really long time, which is going to be Nilah's Formless Blade strikes in a line, damaging all enemies. Hitting an enemy will briefly increase their attack range and attack speed, and empower our basic attacks, causing them to splash in a cone and deal damage. Also, as a passive, attacks and ability damage against champions ignore some armor and heal Nilah for part of their damage, and then it has crit scaling. Okay, so it seems like they've learned from Zeri that they want to make sure that the power is put into crit. Next is Jubilant Veil, and that's just like the extra range that you can kind of see. It's about like 250 or 300 range. It's looking like a recon auto attack. Next is Jubilant Veil. Nilah shrouds herself in Jubilant Veil and briefly gains bonus movement speed and takes reduced magic damage and dodges all incoming attacks. Okay, so I feel like when I'm watching this is a modern version of Yasuo in a lot of ways. So, you know, gold card is actually an attack. Also, touching an ally hides them in the veil as well, but I don't know why they have but, and they'll be protected for a shorter period. So this is kind of like a mixture of Yasuo win, like an individual win wall or something like that. Maybe like Samira in a lot of senses too. It seems like you can activate it while auto attacks are flying through the air too, so it seems a bit OP. I guess this is like the part of the character that's supposed to, you know, give her the ability to fight back at ranged, you know? Since they especially want to see her in bottom lane. Not a big fan of it just because I already am sick of the jokes of Gwen is immune, and having another character that has that is really problematic. I hope that this is an incredibly short duration, like maybe half a second or something like that. In fact, actually, maybe we can just watch it. 1, 2, 3... And it's like 2.5 seconds. It's probably a bit too long still, to be honest. And then next is going to be Slipstream, which is her E. Lets her dash through a target through a target unit, traveling a fixed distance every time, and damaging all enemies she passes through. She can store up to 2 charges at once. Okay, not a fan of the 2 charges, but I like the dash component. Oh, you can cast Formless Blade during it. Okay, so you can kind of see right here when she's doing this, she's dashing through a player, and then she's actually dashing and activating her Q at the same time on the second dash. Which then deals damage after a quick delay and grants the enhanced basic attack. So this is kind of like your comboing feature for a lot of it, where, okay, you're going to dash onto someone and you're going to activate Q at the same time. That way, when you've landed, you know, you can already start activating your ranged auto attacks and make sure you chase people down. And then finally, her ultimate, Apotheosis. She unleashes a surge of power, lashing her whips, and with a final burst, pulls her enemies towards the middle. It also heals her for part of her damage, converting any excess healing into a shield. Alright, it seems like they were really obsessed with making this character heal. That seems to be like in the kit altogether. The ult itself, it doesn't seem like it slows or snares though, so I feel like for the most part it's only something you get hit if you have no mobility or you're already in the epicenter. So like, could easily see scenarios where like someone she dashes on you, then she puts the ulti down and activates the Q and starts hitting you, and then, you know, when you finally get out, if you can't get out of it, then she'll dash on you again and like finish you off. Yeah, looks like it. Okay. I'm curious to see if any slowing things go on this character too, like if you build any slowing items or whatever. So, initial thoughts, I'm terrified of the passive, the secondary passive. I know I spent a lot of time on that, so that is going to be the thing that makes or breaks her, because if they make her a normal character and then have that passive, then she'll be broken and permabanned every game, and you basically won't get to play her for 6 months. But if they remove the passive, you know, because, you know, it's a new champion that's just been spotlighted, they can change the character. If they literally remove this, then they can play around with all these actual functional numbers and make the character, like, pretty good and exciting. Honestly, I get vibes of Yasuo. Yasuo bottom lane is pretty much the closest I can think of, but can't play with can't play with an engager as well as they play with an enchanter. That being said, it wouldn't surprise me if you could also augment this by playing an enchanter mid and then just playing a tank all-in character, or maybe like Rakan. I think Rakan is probably going to be her premium partner. To be honest, since both of them have dashes, ways to follow up, etc., and Rakan still shields and heals. So maybe Rakan is going to be like that elite pairing that maybe even makes this character kind of over the mark, because they're thinking like, oh, well, she needs to play with Enchanter, so she has all these tools to get on people, but it's not that big of a deal because, you know, she lanes with an Enchanter. And then all of a sudden, oh crap, Rakan is a melee Enchanter / engage character and like puts her power too far forward. Overall, I think this character is cool, but not that inspiring, to be honest. I just feel like I'm looking at a retextured Yasuo with healing and shielding. And once again, I think that the attempt at going outside the box with the character is the EXP change, which is a terrible change. It's not good for the foundation of the game. We should learn from our mistakes with characters like Mordekaiser and how they fought against the duo lane EXP, EXP problems. And this was when you used to get a lot more EXP too, by the way, in bottom lane. So I'm not excited for that. I think if they get rid of that, the power curve on the character will be fun. And I think it's kind of cool to see a melee-esque character that gets to pair with an enchanter. I think this is, you know, they're trying to reimagine the wheel in that sense, and that is a good move forward, but I'm really scared of that EXP change. So mostly keeping my eyes on it. She'll be cool to play with. I think Rakan will be the best pairing as long as they keep all the things the same and the numbers are like pretty reasonable on the character. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment in the section below and tell me what you guys think of Nilah. What do you think? Like, is she a cool character that she's super inspiring? Is she just looking turbo broken like all the new characters that seem to tend to come out? Or are you unimpressed? You know, maybe it's not as creative as you thought they'd really go with a character like this. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Peace.